Hey everybody, my beggar's take today is about normal. In the midst of all of the COVID-19 preparations and precautions, everybody's hoping that we get back to normal sometime. The normal that was before all of this. Or for those who've decided that maybe that normal never exists anymore, that we can't go backward, we'll have to go forward. A lot of us are thinking that we'd like to establish a new normal, something new that will be the same day in and day out, that will restore the routines of our lives and make things feel a little less like, well, it's all been put in a blender and is whirling around in our lives. I'm not so sure, though, as people of faith, that normal is really something we should ever get used to. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. In the book of Isaiah, the 43rd chapter, one of the most hopeful chapters and a favorite of mine that you'll find in all the Old Testament, we hear God announce through the prophet Isaiah that God is doing a new thing. God is going to lay rivers in the middle of the desert. God is going to put a pathway, a highway right through the middle of the desert. That the things that have been dry and worn out will no longer be that way anymore. Jeremiah says some of the same things in the 31st chapter of that book. The psalmist says, sing to the Lord a new song, a song that's never been heard before, something that is not yet done. Maybe as people of faith, part of our embrace of the reign of God as it rolls to us from the future God has prepared is to be ready for new things all the time, to let aside the desire that we have to keep things normal and predictable and the same. The story of God's people is full of not normal things. Normal for the people of Israel for 400 years was to work every day in the brick pits of Pharaoh, to be enslaved by people who had the power to oppress them, to be dependent upon them for their food and their livelihood. God did not like that normal, and God created a way in the wilderness out of oppression through the Red Sea. God did a new thing, not a normal thing. When the people were conquered and carted off to Babylon, normal became sitting by the rivers of Babylon and singing the sad songs, the laments of the Psalms, much to the derision of their Babylonian captors. But then when Persia conquered Babylon and allowed the people to go back to Judea, God did again what wasn't normal. The oppressors let people go free. Most importantly for us as Christians, normal was that Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, and the religious officials who were a bit in cahoots with him had the power to crucify a man, and so they did. Normal would be that he would be laid in a tomb and his body would rot in death just like every other dead person before him. But God didn't have normal in mind. Instead, the resurrection raised Jesus up. So you see, my friends, we worship a God who is not about normal, but instead about stirring things up, about creating things new, about making a new way in the wilderness, about, well, even in the midst of COVID-19 plans and preparations, sending us in a new way. So I find myself wondering, is God not taken all of the chaos that's been created by this little tiny virus that we can't even see, and is God doing new things? It certainly seems to me that for those of us in the church that are doing our absolute best to try to minister, to worship, to teach, to do what we do, even though we can't gather together, we're being forced to do things in a new way. That maybe God is at work in the midst of this, causing us to let go of that tired old tome, we've never done it that way before. Maybe God is breaking up through the power of this virus all of the things that kept us from doing a new thing. Maybe that's what we need to be on the lookout for, that God is doing a new thing in our midst, and that we don't want normal the way it used to be, nor do we want a new normal that would set a pattern that we have to live with. What we want is a God of resurrection, a God of the Spirit, who is constantly taking the chaos of life and bringing new things into being. So maybe we should be rejoicing at all of the change that's taking place, all of the new things that we've had to learn, the recipes that we've had to concoct and cook in our homes, the ways that we have learned to shop in new ways, and most importantly for the church, the ways we've had to learn to worship and to pray and to minister and to reach out to the world. My friends, this beggar's take is that maybe normal isn't our friend. As one of my favorite rock and roll artists, Bruce Coburn, says, the trouble with normal is it always gets worse. And this beggar's take is that I'm glad we worship a God who doesn't truck with normal very often, but in fact is always doing a new thing. May this whole situation that we face today, with all of the change and the chaos and the anxiety that comes along with it, make us open our eyes and our hearts to see what God might be doing that's new. No more normal, only the new path in the wilderness, the river in the midst of the desert, the path out of slavery into something new and wonderful. Lord, hear us as we pray. Not for normal, but for you and your way of resurrection and life. That's this beggar's take. Peace be with you.